Well, it's budget night tonight, and the Treasurer is going to be handing down the first surplus in 15 years, a $4 billion surplus. He's also trying to ease cost of living pressures for Australians, a $14 billion cost of living package. But the trick is to do that without forcing the RBA's hand. Rate City Director of Research, Sally Tindall, joins me now. Sally, great to have you on the show. Look, this is a very fine line that the Treasurer needs to walk here. It's a massive cost of living package. We're expecting to see that job seeker payments will increase. We know there's a raft of other measures as well. We're expecting that there'll be some relief, some help for families with their energy bill, estimated to be about $500 per family off their bill. Again, we'll know those details in a couple of hours' time. But the question is this going to contribute to the main problem affecting our economy at the moment, which is inflation?
No, this is the million-dollar question, and the proof will be in the pudding when we get to all the budget papers and can see how these concessions, these cost of living measures are delivered to families. Will it mean that they go out and buy flat-screen TVs, or will it provide real targeted relief for people that genuinely need it, for people who cannot afford to keep their lights on, buy medication and pay for, their grocery shop that seems to be going up and up and up at every single shop that they go to? This will be the critical question. It's a very fine tightrope that the RBA is walking and the government is walking. The good thing about the government is they've got lots more levers to pull. The RBA has one very blunt, hard instrument in raising the cash rate. It affects everyone, but it impacts some of the lowest earning households the most, whereas the government has the ability to fine-tune this so they provide relief to the people that genuinely cannot afford to eat, and then don't give concessions to people who are surviving these rate hikes.
Yeah. Look, we're looking at, as I said, the first surplus in 15 years. Josh Frydenberg would have loved to have handed one down. I mean, he announced it and then it disappeared. Wayne Surplus announced it 4 times. It never happened. It is going to be a brief surplus, however. Do you think the government looks to be doing enough to rein in expenditure? I mean, they've got such large built-in recurrent spending in the years ahead. The NDIS is a massive one, defence spending, the AUKUS submarine deal. Do you think they are doing enough work to rein in spending?
Well, I'm sure there'll be plenty of critics that come out and say that they're not doing enough to rein in spending, but this is a Labor government and this is what Labor does. They do, they're not going to cave on things like the NDIS just to, boost, their chances of delivering another surplus next year. They've got, some guiding principles that they will stick to, but where you might find some additional changes in the years ahead is how they bring in that income. They cannot rely on low unemployment to deliver them a surplus year after year after year, because unemployment is set to rise. So they will have to look elsewhere for some extra money.
The reason that there is a surplus, of course, is that the revenue is much higher than was even forecast in the October budget that Jim Chalmers announced or handed down. We're seeing higher company tax profits. We're seeing personal income tax much more than expected. There's been wages growth, there's bracket creep, there's close to full employment, really. This isn't going to last, though, because we are expecting the unemployment rate to increase.
We are absolutely expecting it. That's kind of the point of these RBA hikes, is to put pressure on budgets, to put pressure on companies. Unfortunately, there will be casualties along the way, but there are some initiatives that they can look to help, bring people back into the workforce. Things like the childcare subsidy changes that are coming in on the 1st of July. They were announced back in October, but they provide real relief to families up to $530,000. Families that earn $530,000 a year, if you can imagine that.
You'd think that's completely unnecessary, wouldn't you?
But the idea is to get more women doing bigger hours, or parents across the board, but traditionally it's women that are most affected, getting in there and doing more hours in the workforce and making sure that the dollars add up around the kitchen table, because there's no point doing extra hours when you're just handing it back out in childcare costs. This will help relieve that pressure. This will help the equation stack up for a lot of families around the country from 1 July.
Yeah, and that was a point that Jim Chalmers made when he did include that relief, that it would be a productivity measure. Now, Albanese, of course, made this announcement that the welfare payment for single parents would change from 14 years to 8 years. The coalition looks like it's not going to support this move. There's been the argument as well that's arisen that this might be a disincentive to single parents to find work if these payments are increasing. What do you think about these arguments?
Yeah, look, I can see both sides of the argument. At the end of the day, it's providing options for families, and I think that is critically important. Some families, for many reasons, just can't get into the workforce. They need to be caring for their children, and so it's about delivering options at the end of the day.
Yeah. The RBA, do you expect that we are going to hear any commentary from the Governor or the board on whether this budget does in fact contribute to inflation, or there won't be any comments on that?
I think that Governor Lowe's pretty good at steering clear of these discussions, and so I don't expect to hear from the RBA, certainly.
Because he has emerged as a scapegoat, you could argue.
Absolutely has been a scapegoat. I mean, there's certainly central banks around the world are all hiking the cash rate, in many cases well above what, the hikes that we've seen here in Australia. He's definitely become public enemy number one, but he knows, he's very good at sticking to his lane. I do not expect him to have, engage in running commentary about whether this does or doesn't add to inflation, but could be proven wrong.
All right. No, I think he will be silent, but it would be fascinating to hear what the RBA board has to say about that. Sally, Tindall, thank you very much for your insights.
Thanks for having me.